Imagine this. You see a perfect order block. Liquidity sweep, all requirements are met. You try to long the retest of that order block. But all of a sudden, your long doesn't hold, you get stopped out, and you become part of the liquidity. I think this sounds quite familiar to a lot of people. But what if I told you that that's the exact moment where the opportunity actually arises to start making money? That's what we call a breaker block. And in today's video, I'm exactly going to show to you guys how to spot one and how to trade a breaker block. Let's dive into it. We are all familiar with order blocks, right? A final green candle before a leg to the downside is what we call a bearish order block, or a final red candle before a leg towards the upside, aka this final red candle over here, is what we call a bullish order block. Now, a breaker block is basically when price breaks through an order block and then it turns into a breaker block. And that is exactly what we were seeing over here, right? So we could see that price was trending up like this. It formed a final big green candle over here before a strong bearish leg towards the downside, aka creating a bearish order block. We can see that price neglected the bearish order block. It pushed back above it and it opened and closed multiple candles above that bearish order block, neglecting it, completely ignoring it. And then we can see that a previous bearish order block that was supposed to act as resistance then turns into a breaker block and it starts acting as support. It acts as support once, twice, a third time, and even a fourth time before price started pushing towards the upside. The exact same goes for a bearish breaker block. Right here, we could see a final red candle towards the downside before expanding towards the upside, which means that red candle was supposed to be a bullish order block and hold as support. We can see how price neglected that support area and it sliced right through. Then it retested the previous support, the previous bullish order block, and we can see how it then turned into a resistance area and then price saw a rejection. So here, the previous bullish order block turned into a bearish order block as well, respected as resistance. Hold on, because this is important to understand. The thing is, with a breaker block, it becomes a breaker block after a demand or supply area, aka an order block, has failed. Which means that all the big players that were looking to trade the retest of that order block, their positions are now underwater, right? So that's also the exact reason why the previous demand to supply area now turns into resistance. Because if price retests that previous order block, which now turns into a breaker block, those big players in which their positions are now underwater get one more opportunity to get out of their position around break even. And if they retest that previous order block, those positions get back at the break-even level. So that's the exact opportunity for the big players to exit their positions for either a tiny loss or a break-even. And when they exit their positions, that adds to the existing short or long pressure. And therefore, the previous order block now turns into resistance, aka a breaker block, and it's the perfect area to execute potential longs and shorts. Let me explain some things on the whiteboard. Because when people accumulate orders down here and price pushes up, those orders have been accumulated within this area. So this is our order block. People then are looking to play the retest of that order block to accumulate even more long and buy positions down here within this order block. If the bears are now strong enough to push the price and slice it through that order block, all the buyers and long positions that have been accumulated within this area, all of a sudden, if price now trades here, are underwater. They're in a loss. This is very, very interesting, right? Because if we now redraw this for a second, we can see and identify that if people accumulate buy positions down here and we slice through it, that a lot of short and sell positions are in an unrealized loss. And if price would retest the previous order block, it would provide the opportunity to those players that were underwater in an unrealized loss over here to exit their position within that previous order block around break even over here, or maybe even in a slight profit or for a tiny little loss. If those people that accumulated long and buy positions over here now start exiting their long and buy positions over here, it obviously automatically adds again to the short and sell pressure, and therefore the previous demand area now turns into a breaker block and acts as resistance to push the price lower. If you want to trade a breaker block, there's a couple of things that we need to check off. First of all, we need a previous strong order block to be broken through in order for it to turn into a strong breaker block. Now, right here, we can see a previous bearish order block. And it was a strong one as well, for a couple of reasons. First of all, because this order block swept liquidity over here before getting a strong bearish push towards the downside, also putting in a bearish market structure break towards the downside right there. And also while it was pushing towards the downside, we can also see it left behind a strong bearish displacement as well. Now, these three things are indicating that this last green candle before this leg to the downside is what we call a strong bearish order block, and thus it was very likely to act as resistance. Now, you want those kind of order blocks to be broken through in order for them to turn into strong and reliable breaker blocks. Now, when you break through the previous, in this case, bearish order block, you also want price to do that with momentum, indicating that buyers were stepping in and were regaining control. Now, how can you identify that momentum? By these bullish displacements over here. Those bullish displacements are indicating momentum from buyers and buyers regaining control. And now that we trade back above the previous bearish order block, we know that all sellers that stepped in over here, their short and sell positions are now underwater. There's one more requirement that needs to be met in order to trade the retest of that order block. You cannot blindly long the retest of that order block and then just target a breakout towards this buy side liquidity right there, for example, right? You cannot just blindly put your order right there and then target that level. In order to trade the retest of that bullish breaker block, we need price to form a valid inducement above the breaker block. In this case, we can see that price indeed formed a valid inducement above because it was slow grinding towards the upside above that bullish breaker block that we just identified. And therefore, it was engineering a lot of liquidity beneath those lows right there. You want that liquidity to align above that breaker block, aka valid inducement to align above the breaker block. And then you want to sweep that inducement into the bullish breaker block with your stop beneath the low of that bullish leg towards the upside. And then you want to play the retest targeting higher levels. Without that inducement, you cannot trade the bullish breaker block. So now we can see all requirements have been met. We can put a limit long exactly at the top of the bullish breaker block. We have our target right over here with those equal highs. And now this should be a great trade to play because all the requirements have been met. We have a drawn liquidity, and you can also see that in that case price fills our limit order, straight away sees a strong bounce from the bullish breaker block and also hits our target, gaining us some very, very nice profits. So that's the breaker block, a filled order block that now turns bullish or bearish, and it's the perfect area to execute potential trades. I've actually done a video on order blocks themselves as well. I released that video around 2 weeks ago, and if you guys want to check out that video on order blocks, it's a very, very good video if I have to say so myself. I will leave a link to that video in the description down below, or make sure to check out the video right here or right here. Check out the video, let me know what you guys think, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know, and I'll make sure to answer all of the questions for you guys. Thank you guys for watching, and ciao ciao!